Hey everybody. So we've been talking a lot about sleep lately. We've been talking about why we sleep, the stages of sleep, what happens when we don't get enough sleep, and we've also talked about sleep disorders. But the one thing we haven't really spent a lot of time on yet is why we dream. We know that dreaming occurs in the stage of REM, but do our dreams mean anything? Are they significant, or do they mean nothing at all? And so the study of dreaming is called anaurology. And so if you're interested in this, you can kind of Google that word and get some more theories other than what we're going to talk about today. But this question has fascinated people for a really long time, pretty much since people have existed. I mean, we have records of ancient Babylonians from 5,000 years ago recording dreams on clay pots and trying to interpret them. The ancient Egyptians used to actually have a temple to their god of dreams. And there are actually over 70 passages in the Bible that deal with the significance of dreams. And so I think people have this innate hunger within them to try and figure out what do our dreams mean, if anything. And so it's a big question. And like some other things in psychology, psychologists are not 100% sure about why we dream, but there are some dominant theories that I think are pretty credible. And today we're going to talk about 5 of those theories. Now, there are many more, but these are the 5 that we're going to focus on today, and they are Freud's wish fulfillment theory. So we're going to talk about Freud again, information processing, activation synthesis, preparation for anxiety, and physiological. So the first theory that we're going to talk about is Freud's wish fulfillment theory. And if you remember at the beginning of the year, we talked about Freud and the psychoanalytic perspective and how he thought that the biggest driving factor behind our mental processes and behaviors was our hidden unconscious. And so that kind of plays into his dream theory as well. Freud said that our dreams are actually the key to understanding our unconscious mind, and that by digging deeper into our dreams' meaning, we can get to know what our unconscious really wants and really desires. So Freud thinks that our dreams have a lot of meaning and a lot of significance, and we should not just treat our dreams like they're nothing, that we should pay special attention to them, because whatever we're dreaming about could be what we really want, or what our unconscious really wants. And so he said there were 2 types of dream content. First is called manifest content, and this is the storyline of your dream, what you actually tell someone. So if I were to ask you, what was the last dream that you had, whatever you told me, that's your manifest content. But Freud said this functions as a safety valve, that this isn't really what our dream necessarily is about. He said that there is a second type of content called latent content, and latent means hidden. And he said this is the true underlying meaning of a dream that's not necessarily put out there with the manifest content. So, and he said too that with the latent content, the 2 dominant forces of your unconscious are sex and aggression, and most of our behavior stems through those deep animalistic desires. So, an example, I think in class, someone shared that they had had a dream that they were in a zombie apocalypse, and they had a hammer, and they were going around just smashing in the skulls of all these zombies around them. So that would be the manifest content of the dream. But what Freud would do is he would ask that person to go deeper and say, okay, what could be some latent content? Do you have some hidden aggression or some aggression that you've kind of repressed and pushed down into you that you're not really allowed to bring forth because it's kind of, against the law to bash people's skulls in? Is there anybody's skull you really want to bash in? And so Freud would kind of use that to go a little deeper, and Freud would probably say that that person has some unresolved anger issues going on inside of their unconscious. So Freud's theory, as you remember from the beginning of the year, he's a very sensational psychologist. A lot of people recognize his name, but unfortunately there's a little scientific evidence to back up his theories. And so this is a cool theory because it gives meaning to our dreams, and it can give a lot of people peace when they have dreams that they believe are particularly meaningful, but there's 0 scientific credibility to this. It's all subjective. I mean, I could interpret your dream one way, this person could interpret it another way, and so not a very strong theory when it comes to that, but take it as you will. Theory number 2 is called the information processing theory, and this theory states that we dream to help our brain form memories. So our brain can decide what do we need to keep and what can we let go of. And we know that REM is significantly associated with memory formation because there have been studies done where they will take a rat and they will put a rat in like a tub of water, and there's a little tiny pedestal in the middle of the tub of water where the rat can stand on, so the rat doesn't drown. And so the rat will actually fall asleep sitting on this pedestal. But you guys know from class that you can't be in REM without laying down. And so as the mouse actually goes into REM, it will fall into the water and immediately wake up. So the goal of the study is to keep the rat from going into REM. And so when the rat doesn't go through REM the entire night, but he'll go through the other stages of sleep, the rat has a significantly more difficult time remembering a maze that they had put him through earlier. Like his memory is just completely depleted because he was not dreaming. We also know, when a lot of times people drink too much alcohol, that prevents you from going into REM, and that's why people can black out and not remember things. So there's a clear correlation between time in REM and your memory formation. This also explains why a lot of your dreams are things that you've done. Maybe you dream about something that night that you did during that day. It makes a lot of sense. Your brain's trying to go through the information. What do I need to remember? What can I forget? Can I forget what I saw this person wearing today? Probably. Can I forget this definition of a word or this calculus formula? Probably not, right? This is also facilitated by the evidence that after a stressful day or a stressful event, the time that we spend in REM that night actually increases. So there's some biological evidence that says REM is really important in sifting through the experiences of our day. Also, the last bit of evidence is that more successful students tend to sleep more and go to bed earlier than not as successful students, which again shows that they're able to formulate their memories better, and they're able to do better in school because they're able to significantly, I guess in a better way, process what they learned that day. So the weakness of this theory, even though there's a lot of biological evidence here, the weakness is that what happens if you have a dream about something that you've never experienced before, or if you've had a dream about someone that you've never seen before? This theory wouldn't explain that, because this theory would say that you'd only dream about what you had done in your lifetime. So a lot of evidence here, more so than Freud, but still some weaknesses as well. Theory number 3 is called activation synthesis, and while the first two theories we talked about said that dreams have a purpose and they have a meaning, this theory says the exact opposite. Activation synthesis theorists say that dreams mean absolutely nothing. In fact, what dreams are is a side effect rather than having an actual purpose. So we know through brain scans that when you are in REM at night, there's a lot of activity coming from your brainstem, so your medulla, your pons, your reticular formation, and so as those bursts of neural activity go throughout your brain in the night, your frontal lobe doesn't stop working. And if you remember from our bio unit, your frontal lobe's job is to interpret and create meaning in situations. And so while you're in REM, you have all this neural activity coming from your brainstem. Your frontal lobe is just interpreting it. It's just doing its job. And so the frontal lobe interpretation is a side effect of what's happening in your brainstem. It doesn't mean anything. So this theory is really good at explaining why we can have crazy, fantastical dreams that absolutely make zero sense whatsoever. Like if you think of your craziest dream, you're like, why did I have this dream? That didn't make any sense whatsoever. This theory would be very good at explaining it. So if you had a dream, you told me, Stephen, I dreamt about a Komodo dragon last night. What does that mean? Well, if I take the activation synthesis approach, I'm going to say it means absolutely nothing. It means your frontal lobe interpreted that random brain activity in that way. A weakness of this theory, though, is it still doesn't explain why our frontal lobes interpret the activity the way they do. So you and I both might have the same neural firing at night, but my brain might interpret that as different images than your brain does. And so why? What makes that different? We've also done studies on people that have damage to their brainstem. And so their neural activity firing is not the same as what a normal person's would be, but they're still dreaming. And so we don't stop dreaming just because our brainstem is damaged. So there's got to be a greater purpose than that. But this theory, again, also has a lot of evidence to it as well. The last thing I'll tell you about this theory, it also kind of explains why sometimes we can get random noises from outside of our bed in our dream. So for example, sometimes your alarm clock could be going off in real life outside of your dream, and that sound ends up in your dream somehow, and then you wake up and you realize you were dreaming about the alarm clock noise. And that's just because when you're sleeping, your senses don't stop working. There's still the information still coming into your brain, and your frontal lobe is interpreting that sound along with whatever you're dreaming about. So that's the activation synthesis theory. Theory number 4 takes an evolutionary approach to explaining dreams, and this is called the preparation for anxiety. And they say that we have dreams in order to give us anxious situations outside of our consciousness. That way, if it happens in real life, we're prepared for it. And they got this from evidence from research done that says that about 80% of our dreams have negative content. They're either scary dreams or something bad's happening, or we're just anxious, we embarrass ourselves. And so I want you to think about the dreams that you remember, the dreams that you've had recently, and how many of them have been bad or negative. Most people have a lot of bad dreams. And so there's got to be, according to these theorists, a purpose of why our dreams are negative. And they say it's to prepare us for anxious situations that'll happen in real life. Now, this can change from culture to culture or time period to time period. For example, we have evidence from like cave drawings and the pots I was talking about at the beginning of the video on how ancient cultures, they used to dream about, being chased by predators or things that would kill them. Well, we aren't really anxious about that today because we don't really have animals running around that are going to kill us in our culture today. But we dream about things like going to class naked or forgetting something really important or embarrassing ourselves in front of our friends. And so even though the types of anxiety are a little different today, they still are anxious dreams. Or maybe you have a lot of those dreams where like someone's chasing you and you're like moving like mud, you're just stuck in mud, you're so slow. That would be an example of the preparation for anxiety as well. The last bit of evidence for this theory is that when we are dreaming, our amygdala is very, very active. If you remember from our bio unit, the amygdala is fear and aggression, both things that are very involved with feeling anxious. The weakness of this theory, though, is what happens if you have a good dream. I mean, plenty of us have had good dreams that we want to keep having, right? So this theory doesn't do a very good job of explaining that. All right, so the last theory is the physiological theory, and this theory takes a developmental approach and says that the reason why we dream is to preserve and grow our neural pathways. So there is a lot of very unique brain stimulation that occurs while we're dreaming, and it kind of is goes along the lines of if you don't use it, you lose it, and so dreaming prevents us from losing it. It kind of trains our brain in our sleep so that we can preserve neural pathways that we've made during the day. And some evidence of this is that infants spend the most time in REM out of any other age group, and they're growing the most there. They're just starting to form their neural connections. And so there has to be something deeply biological about dreaming and the formation of our brain and the formation of our cognitive processes. I guess the weakness of this theory would be, what happens if you have a really meaningful dream? This theory can't explain it. It also kind of is a weakness, too, when you see elderly people that are still having very vivid dreams, very meaningful dreams. This would say, they're elderly, they're dying, they shouldn't be having as much dreams or the same type of brain stimulation if it's all physical. So that's your physiological theory. So I think a good way for you to check yourself on how you are understanding these dream theories is to draw a little continuum line in your notes like this, labeling one end that dreams mean very little, and then the other end that dreams mean quite a bit. And I want you to plot the theories accordingly on where they should go on the spectrum. And if you can do that, then that probably means that you understand the theories well enough to be able to evaluate them against each other. So the last thing I'll tell you about before we end this video is that even though we don't have all the answers about why we dream and nobody can kind of really agree on why we dream, psychologists definitely agree that REM is important and we need it to survive. There's something deeply biological about it. And this is evidenced by something called REM rebound. And this is a phenomenon where if you are sleep deprived, like if you've gone a couple days without sleeping as much as you should, or you pull an all-nighter, the next time you go to sleep, you're going to statistically spend significantly more time in REM than you would if you were just sleeping a normal night's rest. So there's some sort of biological catching up that needs to be done in your body. Another evidence that suggests that REM is biological is that mammals need REM as well. Every single mammal enters into REM somehow. And so it's not just a human thing about trying to decide what our unconscious is. There's something biological about it that helps our body function its best. And then lastly, the literally sleep like babies that I have on the screen, that term came from the fact that babies spend more time in REM, and so when we are REM deprived, we more likely sleep like babies because we're in REM more often. Okay, so hopefully this was informative for you about why we dream, and hopefully you were able to pick one of these theories as one that seems credible to you, and hopefully gives you a little piece about why you've had some crazy dream or a dream that you've been thinking about a lot lately. So I will see you in class.